John Cowlishaw is our speaker today, and John taught biology at Oakland University in Michigan for 45 years. He and Corinne moved to Brunswick 3 years ago, when they decided to join our UU congregation here in Brunswick, and joined the choir shortly thereafter, and then quickly became the music director. His other hobby is aviation, and that is what he is going to talk about today. John, you should be able to share your screen and unmute yourself. Let me know if you have a problem.
Coming up. Okay. Well, first of all, thanks to Beth for finding those such an appropriate children's talk and Blue Boat Home. A picture's worth 1,000 words. How can aerial photography aid our environmental conservation efforts? I've been a private pilot for 27 years. Last year, I joined South Wings, a nonprofit conservation organization that provides a network of amateur pilots who volunteer their time to take environmentalists, policymakers, and news people on flights to view the area from above. South Wings is headquartered in Asheville, North Carolina, and has conducted thousands of flights over the Gulf oil spill, the Appalachian coal mines, the Chesapeake Bay, and recently, the Golden Ray. When Barbara Sprouse asked me 6 months ago to talk about South Wings, I was going to tell you about all these great environmental flights I had, but after one flight, alas, COVID-19 struck and closed down much of general aviation. So I'll broaden my talk to the use of aerial photography in environmental conservation. The whole talk's about 18 minutes. We might have time for some Q&A at the end. Many environmental problems hit you in the eye as you walk or drive around coastal Georgia. There's a smelly dump or an oily river, etc. Others are more visible from above. Let's leave the two-dimensional world that we all live in most of the time and enter the 3D world. So what does an aerial view add? Well, you're looking down on top, you're viewing a larger area, you're seeing areas that aren't even visible from the ground, and you're viewing proximities and relationships. And if you add the fourth dimension of time, you're seeing how things are changing, either due to human activity or to the natural forces of weather. So, how to get up there? How to get that aerial view? Well, I'm going to talk about 3 ways: satellites, drones, and airplanes. All 3 give you pictures. Airplanes also give you the personal experience of being there, seeing. So first of all, satellites. Here's an early photo from space, the first television image of Earth transmitted by a weather satellite in 1960. That's kind of when it all started to have such incredible views. Nowadays, satellite photography can be used to produce composite images of an entire hemisphere. Such pictures, or the famous one taken from the moon of Earthrise, which Beth actually showed, demonstrate the interconnectedness of our Earth world. The Landsat program is the longest running enterprise for the acquisition of satellite imagery of Earth, but most of it has not been processed from the raw data. After all, Earth's surface is 200 million square miles, so you have to know where to look if you're trying to access visual information. Such publicly available satellite image data sets are typically processed by third parties, such as Google Earth, with its private computer program that makes it more user-friendly and incredibly detailed down to sizes like 15 centimeters. Here, for example, is our home in Pepper Tree Crossing on the north edge of Brunswick from Landsat via Google Earth. In the lower center, those white spaces are our driveway, and you can see the cracks in the driveway that are about a half an inch thick coming from a satellite image. Let's back off a bit to see the whole Pepper Tree community. It's the triangle, pie-shaped, in each of these two pictures. On the left from Google, and on the right from my airborne camera. Well, you immediately see this area, which is a deforested construction of a new school, Altama Elementary School, that's not visible over here on the Google picture. So although they advertise as it being a 2020 photo, that's not true because the construction's been going on for some time. Here's another photo I took even closer up showing details of the construction just across a tree line from the row of houses at the east end of Pepper Tree Crossing who've been hearing the construction for over half a year and were happy to be able to visualize it from this photo that I took. Aerial imagery can be coupled with other technologies. One of the most powerful of these is called LiDAR, or 3D laser scanning, which can be used to make high-resolution maps with multiple applications. I'm going to show you a couple. In this dramatization, an aircraft flying over the jungle maps every leaf in this Brazilian rainforest, allowing assessment of the health of the forest during climate change.
Pulses of laser light, 300,000 per second, each one represented by a single leaf. Flying above a protected area of a Brazilian rainforest, NASA scientists measure changes in the canopy to understand how climate change affects the amount of carbon stored in the Amazon's mighty trees.
Just last month, LiDAR was used to discover a 3,000-year-old Mayan town under the vegetation in Mexico near the Guatemalan border. LiDAR discovered the remains of this town. This long brown object on the right is a mile-long, 50-foot-high walls, 9 causeways radiating out from it. This is the oldest monumental construction ever found in the Maya area and the largest in the entire pre-Hispanic history of the region. It has changed anthropologists' whole concept of the development of Mexican culture. So satellite views have progressed so much in 60 years that we now have remarkable, detailed, technically processed images of the Earth's surface. But there are issues: user-friendliness, cost, currency, just to name 3. To deal with those problems, let's move from several hundred miles in the sky of satellites down to several hundred feet. That's the domain of drones or UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. Drones can take high-quality aerial photographs and video and can be hooked to real-time vision by wearing a special pair of goggles in which the pilot sees what the UAV sees. They can be maneuvered accurately to precise locations. They're easily deployable, They're up to date, user-friendly, and really rather modest in cost. Apparently you can buy a good one for $400 and a professional level drone for $1,600. But drones have their own limitations. One is height. They're illegal above 400 feet. That's about 5 tree heights. You can get a sense of what that looks like from this picture on the right. So 400 feet above means about 800 foot wide image of the ground down below. A second limitation is the distance from the handler. The weight of the battery limits flights to about 30 minutes. So if the drone is flying 8 miles an hour, that's about 4 miles. 2 out and 2 back. But for immediacy and emotional impact, one can't beat this drone video of the protest march last month in Portland.
The New York Times compiled a gallery of aerial images. The video at the top was shot by Portland Drone. The company was chosen by the Times because it has a waiver for flights over people, otherwise not allowed by the FAA.
It probably took me 10 to 15 minutes of flying to finally realize what I was, a part of.
So how can drones help nature conservationists? Here are 5 ways that we'll go through rather quickly. The first and most obvious is aerial mapping and nature monitoring over time. The drone can provide crystal clear images of all kinds of environments. They can even carry meteorological equipment with them, all kinds of equipment. So that adds to what they can learn from their flight. A second use is renewable energy maintenance. Renewable energy companies can now use small drones to send back real-time videos of wind turbines and turbine blades, power cables, or even hydroelectric dam walls. Disaster relief. Unmanned vehicles are increasingly being used to assess, prevent, and even combat environmental disasters. Protecting wildlife. Drones are a great tool for monitoring with minimal disturbance a species population and determining its range. Can even stop poachers before they strike by pinpointing these locations. On the right is a picture taken from a drone down on top of an orangutan nest. You can just see the orangutan there. And they've been used to find out what vegetation is used to make the nests and the age of the nests, and then to count the orangutans in the area. And finally, drones are precision agricultural instruments. So with all the wonders of satellite and drone technology, what can airplanes do? I can go faster, higher, farther, but that creates disadvantages. I can't go slower than about 70 miles an hour, so snap that photo fast. And I can't go lower than about 500 feet above people and buildings. And although I can go farther, the fuel costs do mount up at $5 a gallon. So the main advantage of airplanes is personal experience. All 3 take pictures, but in an airplane, you are there. As Laura Easterly wrote, when I first started as the Satilla Riverkeeper, a flight was helpful to just get the lay of the land of the watershed. It's helpful to see things from the air because it is hard to get the full picture when you are on the ground. So here is my humble little Piper Tomahawk, a 2-seater, flies about 105 miles an hour. Here's a map, an aviation map of the territory that I tend most often to be flying in, with the Bullock Statesboro Airport shown at the top. and the Brunswick Golden Isles Airport shown at the bottom. Let's now talk about some local aerial reconnaissance. The Golden Ray capsized on September 8th last fall. This is my photo early on. It released fuel oil and engine oil into our waters that threatened our beautiful marshes of Glynn. And indeed, early surveys of the waters showed oil accumulation on the shores of the Sound. Here's the Golden Ray in blue here. On the shores of the Sound, on Jekyll Island at Driftwood Beach and down south, on the East River all the way back up to Blythe Island, and on the Back and McKay rivers and the tributaries that lead into them. An early flight from with South Wings pilot E.M. Beck and Fletcher Sams of the Altamaha Riverkeeper found 2 large rafts of fuel oil on the flight. It's so clunky that it hangs together like a raft. And then here's an oil line that extended all the way back to Blythe Island. And here is visible sheen on the surface of the whole Sound. Several weeks later, I flew with Altamaha Riverkeeper Susan Inman and University of Georgia Professor Mandy Joy looking for oil sheen. There was much less, and in fact, really required their trained eyes to be sure that they were seeing it. We flew over the marshes of the McKay River. We actually flew as low as 300 feet over some parts of the marshes. My more recent photos show the building of the restraining girdle around the Golden Ray prior to its sectioning.
These are good pictures.
And I've just been asked by the Altamaha Riverkeepers to take photos once the sectioning starts of the ship to observe the process. Georgia's rivers are particularly important for aerial monitoring. On the right are shown the major rivers. On the left, the river beds that they drain. Most of our interest here is in the Altamaha and Satilla river beds or river regions. Here are a couple of my photos of the Satilla River. This one is from 3,000 feet. And this one is from less than 1,000 feet. The water level at this point, it was earlier this spring, late winter, the water level was quite high and it flooded the land down here in the lower right of the picture. You can see that. So flooding is common along the Satilla, which makes a proposed landfill in Brantley County near the Satilla seem unwise. This short video by Satilla Riverkeeper Laura Easterly. Outlined in orange is the proposed landfill. It's about 2 miles from the Satilla here. You can see water in the ground here by the reflection of the sun on those areas. Here's a successful fighting due to flooding. This picture of 2015 flooding of the Congaree River stopped development of the billion-dollar Green Diamond development that was going to be built along here outside of Columbia, South Carolina. I'll finish my talk with a video by one of the South Wings volunteer pilots, Hap Endler.
My name is Hap Endler, and I fly a Skylane 182. I always wanted to be a pilot. I started flying back in the early 80s with the military in the Navy, and flew with the Navy for 6 years. Got out and then met with South Wings in early 2000. With South Wings, I've flown as far to the west as Louisiana. We went down to the Gulf after Katrina and flew up into West Virginia with mountaintop removal issues, and we've flown Atlantic coast, South Carolina, North Carolina, and all points in between. Flight partners with South Wings are varied. We have a lot of flights with the Waterkeeper Alliance. We fly the Southern Highlands Conservation. We fly wildlife, reporters, anyone who wants to take a look at environmental issues in the Southeast. It's a great mission to take folks that are passionate about the environment to be able to see their issues from the air. It makes such a difference to be able to see it a different perspective. It's really great to see them in action and help them to be able to do their job.
Here's a final slide suggesting some possible future areas of concern for aviation environmentalists locally. The Rayonier Paper Company in Jessup, Georgia Pulp and Paper in Brunswick, Sea Island Beach with its problems with erosion and controversy about how to fix that, and the Twin Pines titanium mine proposal down here, just off the southeast corner of the Okefenokee Swamp. That's it. Thank you.